Free stuff is awesome, but free stuff to spice up the bedroom is even better. Whether you're buying a gift for your sugar baby or just for yourself, you can get 50% off at adamandeve.com when you enter the code CANDY at checkout.
And that's not all. Adam and Eve will include 10 tantalizing free gifts, a sexy item for him, a special gift for her, and a third item all partners can enjoy. Plus, you'll receive 6 free spicy movies.
But the best part is the free shipping.
You can get all of this at adamandeve.com using code CANDY at checkout.
That's CANDY.
So Shelby, what are you getting me?
Candy Girl Podcast. Fuck me, daddy.
Hey, all you candy sluts and bubble butts. Welcome back to another episode of Candy Girl. I'm your host, Emily.
And I'm Shelby, and today we're talking to Stripper Stories Podcast, and we're so excited. Would you mind telling us a little bit about your show?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm Chloe, and I'm an ex-stripper. Like pre-COVID, I was a dancer. Things have changed a lot recently in the sex industry, so my podcast is very silly. It has lots of stuff about our customers that we come into contact with. Working in the strip club, all my girlfriends, they get on the microphone too. But then we also have some serious stuff. Like we had Dr. Kink last couple of weeks, and he's talking about BDSM and S&M and the history of loads of shit. So yeah, I mean, we have a varied spectrum of stuff, something for everybody who's into anything sex related, sex industry related, sluttery, basically. So yeah, it's a good little listen. Thank you so much for having me on your show. I'm such a fan.
Oh, we're so excited to have you. I want to know how you got into stripping. What was the catalyst for that?
Well, first of all, I was at drama school, like a lot of people in London, slugging away, trying to get a master's at a really stupidly expensive school. And then I was dating some guy, and he was working at this bar with me. He was a piano player. And I told this story a million times, and people are like, why? What the hell? And he was like, why don't you just decide to audition and be a dancer? Because I see you over the bar, because I was working at the bar while he was playing. Guys giving them your number. No, their number, right? And I was like, okay, that's a bit of a strange thing for a guy I'm dating to say. And he was like, why don't you just audition? I was like, you can pay off all your master's money, your master's loan. And I was like, that's ridiculous. We had an argument maybe 3 weeks after that, and we nearly broke up. And I just thought, oh, fuck it, I'm just gonna go and dance. And I went down to London, auditioned, and the same day I worked. And then I never looked back after that. 8 years later, I'm still doing it. And yeah, it's a funny thing for a guy to push you into that, or at least suggest it. But I'm so glad in a way that this asshole did, because I've met so many cool people. I've done so many interesting things from it, and it's made me a different person. And I think that I'm really proud of the choices that I made from it. But yeah, I didn't decide on my own in a way. Someone else suggested it, which is a bit of a strange thing. But yeah. It's cool, weird.
What about stripping do you love?
I think it's the social side, as well as obviously the money is great. And the girls, there's a camaraderie, I think, with women working in the industry. It was a very dog-eat-dog, catty world, and something that I was really not comfortable in for maybe the first year of doing it. And I kind of had to work into it. So for me, it's kind of hardened me up as a person, and it's shown me different sides of the world. I don't think personally, from my background, I would have seen. So for me, I'm kind of grateful for that. I've met so many cool girls, and my podcast, for instance, I wouldn't have done that if it wasn't for my job. So yeah, for me, the sex industry and working as a stripper was probably just how it changed me as a person, and the people that I met through it.
That's super cool. Emily, do you have any questions?
Any advice for people who maybe want to break into the community, probably after the pandemic?
I don't know. I don't know whether it's the right time now, even after the pandemic, to break into the sex industry. It's been I've been talking about with other people on other podcasts, porn. People used to pay for porn, and now the golden age of porn has gone straight down. And it's the same with dancing. It's I think it's taken COVID for it to just wipe the strippers off the face of the earth. It's got to that point now. We've all had to do different jobs. So I don't think, if it was my suggestion, going into stripping now would be a good idea. I think go into another side of the sex industry, like cam work or Babe Station or something online where there is security and safety. I think that would be my suggestion.
Oh my God, the strippers are going extinct. That is so
They
sad.
literally are. It's literally ridiculous. We were talking about it the other day. It's like tumbleweed. It's going to be like that for years to come, I'm pretty sure.
Would you mind expanding on that? Like, why do you think, I mean, obviously COVID, you know, people can't go to a strip club and enjoy the experience, but do you think even after the dust settles for the pandemic, people still won't be wanting to go to strip clubs?
Well, I think initially, months ago, when we were all in lockdown, we were saying to ourselves, like all our dancers and our group chats, like the first month back at the strip club's going to be a really good month and we're all going to be like rolling in money and stuff. But like, I think now thinking about it, because of the rise, like the cases are rising, lowering all the time. And it is such a personal job. You have to be up and close and personal, and like, you know, giving someone the sex eye from 2 meters away isn't going to be really like that great. So I personally don't think that it would be the sort of job that you could go back to and it be the same as before. And I don't think people will be going back into the strip club. Like even the city guys in London where everybody was going down there every weekend, I don't think now they've all got families and other people to think about. They're not going to be risking it popping down to the club after work. It's hard enough to go to the pub, let alone the bar, than to go to like a strip club where you're literally in close contact with another body. So yeah, I genuinely don't think it's going to work even after COVID. I think people are still going to be a bit like, put on your mask. Like, how can you have a slutty dance with a mask on? It just doesn't work, you know? I don't know how many strip clubs you girls have been to, but like, even before I worked in them, like you'd see them like the Hustlers movie, for instance. Can you imagine Jennifer Lopez wearing a mask and being like, wow, chicka, wow, wow? It just wouldn't happen. So I don't know. I don't think it's going to happen, to be honest. Unfortunately.
Are you familiar with the drive-through strip club?
Right. Okay. Someone mentioned this to me the other day and I'm like, why the fuck doesn't London have this? It is over here. It's like, we don't know what it is. Please explain to me what it is. I would love to know.
They did it in Texas, near our hometown of Houston.
Wow.
And we actually reached out to them. We were very close to getting an interview, but they ended up just being really busy. So it's also Texas. So it's not like cases are down. Like you were saying up and down. And I was like, where's the dip? So
really?
Yeah.
So how does it work? So how do you drive through? Is it
okay? So basically, they found the best/worst loophole. You can serve food. Obviously, strip clubs are not considered essential businesses, but because they have restaurants and kitchens in the back, it's similar to like kind of how a drive-through works. So they order the food, and then as the food is getting ready, cars will pull into tents, and there is a barricade and a stripper with a mask. There is a 2-song limit. And then they bring you out your food, you leave tips on the pavement, and then you're on your way.
And you stay in your car?
Yeah, you stay in your car the whole time. I wonder if, like, you get to play the music out of your car, or...
This literally blew my mind. This is blowing my mind.
I remember texting Shelby, I'm like, you need to drive to Houston. It's like a 3-hour drive for the record. It's in the same state. It's still 3 hours.
Yeah, of course. America's amazingly massive.
We just need to go experience this. So, and we haven't yet, but I think they're open for regular business. I follow their Instagram now.
What's the Instagram? I need to get on there right now.
Vivid Houston.
Vivid Houston. I'm on there. I'm all about supporting any dancers that are still out there dancing, whether it be like men in a car or not. That's so sick. I'm so into that. I'm not sure if anyone's thought of it here, but I would bring that to London. I'm going to tell the Strippers Collective to get together and put in like a slutty car wash or something. That would be so good.
Is there actually a Strippers Collective?
There is East London Strippers Collective, which is where I live. And there must be a few more, but I know there's the Berlin Strippers Collective, loads in Europe, like loads. Less in London, and it's more of like a fashionable thing. It's less like, it's all about girls supporting girls. I found it. I've added them. But yeah, there is a few collectives, and it's good to support women when they haven't got a job. So if there's like an opening in a certain club, or if someone needs a GoFundMe page for something, or to pass around old, and that sounds really gross, old like costumes and shoes. If someone's like, oh, I bought these shoes from Pleasers, they're $100, but they come in the wrong size, just flog them off to another stripper. Like girls share stuff all the time. So it was more for that, to be honest. I don't know whether it's still even going anymore. It would be interesting to find out, actually. Hopefully it will be, fingers crossed, after the pandemic settles down.
Also, earlier you mentioned the movie Strippers, and I am kind of curious about how accurate...
Wait, do you mean Hustlers?
Yeah, sorry, Hustlers. That's what I meant to say.
It. That one.
Hustlers, yeah. How accurate is that to like an actual strip club and how strippers actually interact with each other on like a work day?
I thought it was quite accurate. Like a lot of me and my girlfriends from the club went to the cinema to watch it. And we were like, ooh, remember when we did that? Remember when we did that? I mean, obviously the drugging, I'm never going to say I haven't seen it because I have seen it. And even in London, across the world, I'm sure that it's happened. At least like selling people stuff in the VIP, like that's a thing. Obviously, because when you're partying, drugs, drink, partying, all hand in hand. So it's hard to get away from. But yeah, I thought it was quite accurate. Obviously, it's like really gentrified, Hollywoodized version of it. But yeah, I thought it was quite good and quite accurate. It's quite funny actually to see, to be honest. And that's like based on a true story, isn't it? From when like the financial crash happened and all of the dudes were like 1 minute spending loads of money in the strip clubs in America, and then overnight they were all these women had like amazing penthouses and all this rent to pay, and then it was just completely wiped, and they were all struggling. So yeah, but I mean, to be fair, if they're going to be drugging people, I mean, they kind of got what was coming to them, kind of thing. I suppose it's not really cool. I would never condone that. No. Mm-mm.
Good.
No drugs. No drugs, no drinking. Drinking is fine. Yeah.
So I do have a little bit of an in-depth question. And I was watching this video the other day about modeling and how when your profession requires you to look a certain way and to always have this image of being beautiful, sometimes it can like mess with your psyche. And obviously stripping is probably on a smaller scale because if you're a model and everybody sees you all the time, you always have to look a certain way. But when your job is based on your image, I'm sure that there are things like a distrust of men that develops and like other issues. Mm-hmm. Are these things that you've ever had to experience in your career?
Good question. Very good question. I think, yes, I would like to say that I haven't been tarnished at all by the industry and that I'm still this like doe-eyed little Bambi running around thinking that all penises are good, but that is not the case. And I think any woman who's basically speed dating at a rate of knots every single night is gonna encounter more men, obviously, than a normal girl just dating on Tinder or Hinge, right? So you're gonna dip into that kind of psyche whenever you're dating a normal person in everyday life. You're like, okay, that guy I met at the strip club last week, he was like that, so this guy must be like that. You end up connecting the dots, and that's not necessarily the right way to live your life. You can't tarnish everyone with the same brush, right? Same with looks and makeup. Like when I was younger, I think when I was dancing as a baby stripper, I felt like I had to go out with a full face of makeup on. I had to have hair extensions, fake eyelashes. I had my boobs done, for instance. And I did all of that more because I was exposed to it. It became more normal to me, I would say. You know, a boob job, people think about having a boob job for years before they have one. And because I had so much money, I just had one day. I was like, oh, yeah, now I fancy a boob job. Now that's not necessarily a normal, like, sane thing to do. I'm very glad I did it because I'm much more confident now, personally, for me. But, you know, the hair extensions and the eyelashes, it's just unnecessary. I've learnt to love my body as I'm older now. And I think my boyfriend never sees me in makeup anymore. He's like, when are you going to wear makeup for me again? And I'm like, never. It ruins my skin, you know, unless I'm working or whatever. So yeah, I think it does really affect women working in the sex industry. I think like it does with influencers, for instance, you know, and seeing all those other lovely, beautiful women who have probably edited themselves. I think dancers do that in a way by having body modifications and sticking hair on and nails and things like that. So yeah, I think it definitely has affected me. But as I've got older, I've come to like rationalize it and be a bit more sane and old about it than just be willy-nilly young girl just like headlights, you know, they're starry-eyed, like I'm going to get 5 boob jobs, you know, it's not how it was for me. But yeah, it has affected me, like with men as well, like with dating. It did affect me at a younger age, I would say. Yeah, and not in a good way.
If it makes you feel any better, most men are kind of the worst, so.
I feel you. I'm like, this is why I have my dildos.
Exactly.
I was like, it's why the rabbit is alive in my life. Yeah. And my pussy cat. I'm just like, cat, don't need a boyfriend. I've just got one now. But
good. Congrats. That's amazing.
Thank you. We'll see how long it lasts. No, I'm kidding. Not putting a downer on it before it's even started. But yeah, I think, you know, animals and dildos. That's the preachy preach that I'm giving.
I mean, that's how I would live my life if I ever started getting treated poorly. Never settle. Boyfriends are replaceable.
Absolutely.
Very easily, too.
Yes. Absolutely, girls. I feel ya. And friends are not. So that's the thing, like keeping friends from the sex industry, girls, it's hard, but if you can do it, you know, because they've seen you at your worst, they've seen you at your drunkest, your poorest, your richest, they've seen you go through loads of different things. And men, they're the ones that like get up and run when something gets a bit difficult sometimes, but those women, I mean, like you girlfriends, you must think the same thing, like they stay. So I've learned that as well from working in the clubs, that like men do come and go, but women, hopefully, if they're good ones, they stick around, which is great.
Yeah, moving to a new city, my biggest emphasis is just on making female friends. I do engineering. I have male friends.
Amazing.
They're fun, but I really need just female companionship. I need somebody who's gonna like call me out on my shit. Or, well, I guess my male friends do, but just not in the same way. And I wouldn't bring up the same things necessarily.
You definitely have different talking points, don't you? I mean, when you're talking with your male friends than with your female. And that's just how it is. I mean, it's, unless you've got your gay guy friends, then they can transition between two things, because they obviously have they're very emotional, they're very emotionally connected. Whereas straight men, I find it very difficult to find straight men who you can just blurt out all your deepest, darkest, sluttiest secrets without them judging you slightly. I mean, if there's anyone out there that can just tell me to shut the fuck up, then do, because I might be completely wrong, but I'm yet to find them. So, I mean, send them to me.
Yeah, and another struggle that I've been having is whenever I am friendly towards like some men, well, I'm friendly to everybody, if I'm being honest, but certain people kind of take it wrong and kind of take it as flirting. And then it makes me uncomfortable, and this keeps happening. And it's so awkward because obviously when I go up to people, I don't want to say, oh, I have a boyfriend, back off. It honestly shouldn't matter if I have a boyfriend or not. It feels weird that as soon as I declare myself as somebody else's territory, that's when they start to ease off. Anyways, that's just a mini side rant. Things are going okay.
Yeah,
here.
that's good. I mean, I completely agree with you. Like, I don't know why it matters what genitalia we have, whether we can have female or male friends. That for me just blows my mind. And like 2020 we're in now, I'm like, come on. It's not like when we're back in the 1800s when seeing an ankle was like the most ridiculous thing a man had ever seen. And we talk about dicks and pussy all the time. It should be completely normalized to have friends of a different sex, and be able to be friendly with them and cuddly, and like you would be with your girlfriends with a dude friend, and it not be anything more, you know? I mean, hopefully that will happen sometime in the next 1,000 years. We'll all understand our genitalia and it doesn't really matter. But until that time, we're going to struggle, I think.
Yeah, like I love the idea of that, but I don't think many of my straight guy friends here would let me cuddle them. I think they'd be
That's
weird.
sad.
Again, I'm also very much in engineering.
Right. Yeah.
So
the straight guys.
The gamers.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's cool. I like that, though. The nerds. I like it.
Yeah.
Is that what you could call them? The nerdy people? That's what we'd call them over here.
Yeah. So there's just like a lot of jokes around, I guess, that subgroup. So
there's nothing wrong with that.
So we talked to Callie Mack in our last episode about dating as a sex worker, and she has done some major porn productions. So sometimes people in dating apps would recognize her from that. And then they would kind of fetishize her, or she wouldn't know when to tell them that she was a sex worker. Have you kind of had a similar experience with dating? Like, you don't know when to tell them that you strip for a living?
Yeah. I have quite a few times, but it was mostly back in the baby stripper days when I just started and I wasn't really sure what to say. I think a lot of women in the sex industry, whether they're an escort, whether they're a stripper, whether they're a cam girl, anything, they do find it hard to tell the opposite sex. Again, I don't know why, that this is what they do, because it's given a stigma, right? And I don't think the women themselves give it the stigma. It's the other people that do. So it's difficult to tell those other people who have clearly a preconceived notion as to what it is to be a stripper. Like, you must be easy. You must be the sort of girl that, oh my God, he's dating a stripper, she must be a total slut. Like, no, it's a job. Like, so it is difficult. But as my baby stripper life grew into a more adolescent stripper life, I kind of rebelled like any normal adolescent would and was like, no, I'm going to tell everyone. And I'm just really proud of what I do. And now I'm just like, it is what it is. If someone at a party asks me, I say, I'll tell them I've got a podcast on stripper stories and you can listen to my first experience of anal. Go and have a listen. Like, everyone's done it. So let's just talk about it and normalize it. And then hopefully in the future, when the next girl says to their boyfriend, oh, I want to try anal, he doesn't go, ooh, or he doesn't go, yeah. There's just no need for it. So I think, yeah, it's back to the question. Like, I'm literally like talking past the question. Sorry. I think it's difficult, but I do think it's a really good test to see if the person is for you, because if you can tell them your deepest, darkest, anything, and if it is something that is a job that is got all this stigma around it, and you can tell a person that you're into and they don't see you as what the stereotypical person would, that's a great thing. So my advice to any woman out there is just to be honest and tell them the truth, because I mean, at the end of the day, if they don't like you for it, then you've lost nothing anyway, have you? So that's kind of how I see it now.
Yeah, you mentioned just a minute ago that your podcast gives you an opportunity to normalize all of these things that everybody already does, but seems to be taboo, which is a lot like what we're trying to do at Candy Girl, is normalize sex work, which is something, I mean, it's the oldest profession. We know what sex work is. So I want to know a little bit about your experience doing a stripper podcast, like the kinds of people that you've met, the things that you've learned. I feel like that's so interesting.
That's cool. Yeah. I mean, I have like met quite a few girls working while on cam specifically. And I've, when I first started my podcast, I'd like email them all like, listen to this little baby podcast. I know you'll like it. And then I started getting feedback from these women who I didn't know. And who were like, would you like me on your podcast? I'd love to talk about this, love to talk about that. I started it initially with my housemate, who is, I'd call a muggle of the world. Like, she's kind of dipping her toe in the sex industry like waters. She has a sugar daddy, but she also has a day job. So she is now gone back to work. So she's got a lot less time to talk about slutty stuff with me. So I think me now being on my own and doing it, and I've actually brought on a couple of my customers onto the show. I'm hoping to like drag on my boyfriend. I'm going to drag on anyone around me that has an opinion that could normalize anything to do with sex work. I think is a positive thing. And like, talking about the Bella Thorne thing, we were talking about that, weren't we? Like via email, all these things popping up in the media is making the sex industry look so whack. Like, still, it's like out of control. And how can these people, and I just think for the real people actually living in it and actually working through it, it's just that all they want to do is just get their head down and do a job, and that's it. And I think it's just nice to be able to talk about like other things too. Like I said, first experience of anal, first experience dating as a stripper, how to get a sugar daddy, what to do when you get one. Like, these things that women probably might not want to speak to their normal muggle friends about, they can listen to the podcast, or they can DM me, which actually a lot of women have started doing. I've got an inbox full of women like, hi, you don't know me, but I, recently signed up to sugardaddy.com. Can you help me? I'm like, great. Absolutely. Lay it on me and I'll help, like, in any way, like, so that for me has been hugely positive, I think, with the podcast.
You talk a lot about girl power and that you're really invested in girl power. Do you think this gives you an opportunity to help more women?
Absolutely. Well, I would hope so. That's kind of the part of the reason why I started the podcast in the first place, not just to like word vomit all of my like filthy, filthy secrets, but it was actually to make more friends. Like, I think I'm one of those women who like, I keep myself to myself. I have the same type of friends, and a lot of them are Muggle-esque people. So for me, starting this podcast was more about reaching out to others who actually do want to talk about the normalizing sex work, normalizing the just average anal experience, and just having a good old chat about it. And like, even with the Dr. Kink that I spoke about, he's a psychologist, but he's not particularly a sex psychologist. I just dragged that all out of him. I was like, let's talk about, you know, the history of hysteria, which was a massive thing in the 1800s. Things like that I find fascinating. So yeah, yes, for me, it's about like having women listen to the podcast and feeling like it's okay to talk about these more difficult subjects. And I think that's probably the girl power behind it for me.
We love seeing women support women.
For real.
So, kind of going off on kind of the opposite brand, but also kind of the same brand. So I kind of wanted to ask about how girl power and how, you know, cattiness and competitiveness can kind of butt heads at times. From what you're saying, it seems very supportive. But I was in a sorority, and I know sometimes women are the best, but they also can be the worst and hit you right where it hurts.
Because they know you the best. So they're like, oh yeah, that's it. I mean, at least men, they're a completely different species. So if they're going to hurt you, it's going to be in a different facet than if a woman does, right? Especially if you're in a sorority, like you said. So yeah, I feel you. Like, it's a different thing in the club too. You know, you're working around women. It's not working in an office environment where you have dudes at the water cooler all talking about really macho things. Women always talk about their boyfriends, their girly things, the things that other women can, you know, relate to. So if they're going to hurt you or stab you in the back, which obviously it does happen because not everybody's nice, they're going to know your deepest, darkest secrets and know how to do it, right? A man can just call you a name, or like, I don't know, they step away from it a little bit. So yeah, the cattiness in the strip club, it just happens like anywhere, I think. Like you said, in your sorority, did you have a lot of bitch fights?
Yeah.
Did you?
Yeah. Overall, they were really supportive, and I love my sorority sisters. That always sounds really like fucking cheesy to say. So
American from over here. Like, we don't have sororities here, so it's like, oh, I feel like I'm in a movie. That's how it feels.
Yeah, I think the difference is when men do it, I could just like go off and be like, who the fuck do you think you are? And just really dismiss it. But whenever I would get very personally attacked, I'd be like, something's wrong with me. I can't even get mad. They got me right where I'm most vulnerable.
Yeah. You are a heartless bitch. Heartless. You know, it's almost deeper when it's a woman doing it to you.
My big thing was I was the flakiest of the friend group. And It's not something I was proud of, but I was also the only one in my sorority studying electrical and computer engineering. And I was constantly busy, so everybody would be going out. And by the time I got back, I was just so tired. I like couldn't go out or do anything.
Yeah. You were like the least sociable, I guess. So they were always a bit like, you were the black sheep a little bit. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that though.
Yeah, but I mean, I think overall I got a really good experience. I joined specifically because I needed more female friends.
Yeah.
So because I missed the female companionship, because I remember going into my first year, I was like, oh, well, I'm in this major because engineering is for girls who don't fuck with other girls. And that could not be any less true. Holy fuck. I was like, these men can be the worst. If I get told one more sexist thing, I'm dropping. I can't do this anymore. It was ridiculous. It's 2020. For some reason, growing up in engineering, I find it so fascinating that more of the sexism comes from younger men than older men. I always thought it would be reversed, but I guess the difference is younger men, it's almost as if they see me as I took their spot or I took their friend's spot. Whereas with older men, they're like, holy fuck, we need diversity. We can't keep coming up with the ideas for like the entire world if we don't have a representative from half the world population.
I back that 100%.
So there's so many like tech products specifically that you can go through and you can just tell it's a mostly male engineering team.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so hard to put into words, but it's so obvious, and they don't realize that it is. So
I think with any industry, having a male female like in any industry is only going to make things better. I mean, and I think that, like you said, it was really interesting what you just said about older men not doing like the catcalling, not doing all of like the sexism. It's like I said about being the baby stripper. You grow out of it, don't you? I think as you're an older man, it's like, I think by the time, like, you know, as women as well, we become, I think, less insecure about our bodies or insecure about telling people just how we are and what we are, right? So as we get older, that's how we kind of mature. I think with men, it's a similar thing. You know, we're not so different, I don't think. So yeah, that's really important.
to some people, it might seem like a stretch. There are parallels between the tech industry and the sex industry, in the sense that at the very top, it's male dominated. Like a lot of the owners, a lot of the people who run a lot of porn sites, it's unfortunately all men. And it just frustrates me. But then I guess the difference is, I don't even know what I'm trying to put into words. Also, it seems like there's LaCroix and sex dungeons and tech offices, and I love asking about that. That's always what I ask dominatrixes. There's a 50-50 chance. Yeah, it all started when somebody offhandedly mentioned, yo, I was drinking LaCroix. And I guess in my head, before I did this podcast, I had this idea of sex dungeons, like basements. You have to go downstairs, there's like a bouncer, all that. And I didn't realize that it was just houses that have been repurposed and like turned into dungeons. So there were kitchens.
Yeah, literally. There's kitchens, there's lounges, there's bedrooms. Like it's just exactly the same in London. Dungeons aren't dungeons. Anyone would think like, you know, the 50 Shades of Grey novel. It's like you go into this red room of pain. Like that's just not how it is. And like that's another thing that I will say about the 50 Shades of Grey novel, that it absolutely changed the way dominatrixes work, like over London. Like I'm not sure about in the US because obviously I've never worked there, but it changed the customer base as well. It was like middle-aged couples trying to spice up their love life using a flogger or like a little bit of candle wax, and they're all like, what's happening to our industry? Like there's some things that come out like the Bella Thorne thing, like Hustlers, like 50 Shades of Grey. Like I spoke to these interesting dudes who do a podcast in New Jersey, and they're both sex writers. They do like sex literature. And they were saying how 50 Shades of Grey affected their market and their jobs as well. Because, you know, it instead of, you know, actually talking about real flogging and real like sub domination, S&M, actual legitimate things, they started having to talk about, you know, the bit more romanticized side of being a dominatrix, which I'm not sure is very helpful. It's like, well, you know, how people don't pay for porn anymore because, you know, there's so much amateur porn out there. Whereas before they would be able to like film porn in like the hidden hills somewhere, and they'd be able to like make it this high, big budget thing, you know, and now it's completely changed the industry. I think, yeah, moving on from the dominatrix dungeon side of things, like a lot of the dungeons have closed down. I think after COVID, I don't know if there'll be any left, unfortunately, sadly. I loved popping into a dungeon. Sad.
Mistress Nikki, if you're listening to this, I sent you an email. Please reply to me. So, does the glamorization of sex work do more good or harm, in your opinion?
That's a hard question. I think
it can also just be a discussion. So.
Yeah, I think, yeah, perfect. I think that if it's done in the right way, it can be a really positive thing. I think it's now it's very like gentrified, the sex industry, I think, with all the Hollywood films and things like that. And it's making more muggles than ever wanting to like dip their toes in and have a little, you know, see what it's like. Bring your friend to work day. Let's go to the strip club. It's strange, right? So it can be a positive thing though, however, and it can normalize sex work and people who do sex work and showing them as real people who just do a job. I think that's the best way to showcase it. However, if there's people bad mouthing, or they've had bad experiences with sex workers, or they have done bad things online, scamming people out of money, things like that, then that can only do harmful things. So I think it's like half and half. It really depends on how it's like promoted, I think, and how it's received.
Do you feel like there's a danger in people who are inexperienced in BDSM or the sex industry writing or producing content that's supposed to be about the sex industry, but there's like a clear, like you said earlier with 50 Shades of Grey, you know, that's not really how BDSM works?
I think people have a responsibility if they're going to write about sex, or they're going to shoot porn, or if they're going to be do a podcast on sex, or they're going to do anything that basically reaches out and talks about it to a wider audience. I think they have a responsibility to research what they're doing, speak to real sex workers if that's not what they do as a job, and do it in the most justified and honorable, if that's the right word, just humble, nice way. I mean, not everybody will work like that, obviously, because we're humans, we make mistakes. And, you know, I mean, I think the clever people, if they want to make good content, if they want to make good literature or good podcasts, they would want it to be authentic, right? So I think personally for me, if I was going to do something and I wasn't in the industry, so for instance, if I wanted to like, I don't know, economics, I was like, oh my God, who do I ask? Oh, Emily, I'll ask Emily. Or if I'm going to, you know, I want to learn about doing anything like podcast wise, like you guys have been doing it much longer than me, I'll ask you. You know, I'm not going to just figure it out and do it wrong and you know, make it just a fumbly mess. I'd rather ask for help, you know. That I think that's the thing, I think, with what you just said completely. I think it's good to reach out to others and figure out and learn from them. I think that's really important.
What's your personal definition of sex work?
Ooh, I think anyone who works and makes a living using their body or parts of themselves in a public, or I don't know, someone who uses their body or themselves to in a sexual manner to earn a living, I guess. I think that would be probably my definition of sex work. I think there's so many facets of it, and it's even using your brain. Like it doesn't have to be your body. That's what people kind of get wrong, I think, about, you know, even just being an escort. Some of them are walkers, for instance. They're still classed as escorts, but they don't have sex for money. They'll go and do the girlfriend experience. That is completely using your mind and like manipulating the situation and being sexual and making the other person feel comfortable. You know, same with BDSM or being a dominatrix. You know, some of them don't ever get naked, don't ever get touched. That's completely using your sexual aura and like your brain. You know, so I think it's exactly what that is, you know. So it's just using yourself and your wits to make a living in a sexual manner.
Well, I know you said you only have 45 minutes to
Yes.
this interview.
Yeah, I do. Sorry.
Oh, no, you're good. I don't want to keep you any longer. Emily, do you have any last minute questions you want to ask before we go?
Which one of the episodes that you've done has been one of the most exciting ones that you've recorded?
That is a good question. I think it's gonna be, I mean, the initial couple of episodes were a lot about the funny customer stories, like the strange chair fucker and the munter, and all of these terms. I was like, whoa, these people have real big time kinks. But for me, my best and most, I think, like close to my heart episode was probably episode 8, I think, Hans Solo, the sugar slut. That talks about my personal experience being a sugar baby and my last experience being a sugar baby with a guy I was kind of connected to for about 4 years, and how that kind of started and like how it ended, which was like the most kind of interesting and strange thing for me to discuss on a microphone, because I'd never really spoken about it before. So yeah, for me, episode 8, have a listen to it if you want to. Yeah, it's actually got some good, as much as it's like just a very, very well told story, it's also got some like good tips and tricks in there if anybody ever wanted to strike up a relationship and be a sugar baby or sugar daddy. So yeah.
We'll link it in the description of this episode.
Thank
so
you,
if you're
girls.
listening and you want to find it. So Chloe, how can people find your podcast? Where is it?
Okay, we are basically anywhere that you listen to podcasts. We have an Instagram, which is Stripper Stories Podcast, and there's a little link in the bio there. So anywhere you listen to podcasts, come and check it out.
And you can find us at candygirlpodcast.com. We just got stickers.
Yes.
So buy some of our stickers or subscribe to our Patreon and we'll send you a sticker. And you can find us on Instagram, Candy Girl Podcast, or Twitter at Candy Girl Pod. Chloe, thank you so much for doing this interview with us. I had such a good time.
Thank you so much, Emily and Shelby. I really appreciate it. I'm such a fan. So yeah, hopefully I'll see you girls again on my podcast. I would love to have you both.
Definitely. Yeah. Keep an eye out for us on Stripper Stories Podcast. We're going to be there.
Amazing. Thank you so much.